Hello, friends. Robert Bevan here, author of the Caverns Creatures series of comedy fantasy novels and short stories. With me is Sam West, and today we're going to be talking about the spell Armor of Agathys. Sam, am I to understand you're not a fan of this spell?
Oh, pardon. Yes. Okay, so I'm a big warlock guy, right? I think I made it clear in a lot of my videos that I really love the warlock class. You would be surprised based on how I review basically every warlock spell to hear that, because I typically give like across the board negative reviews for the warlock exclusives, and this is no exception. I think Armor of Agathys, I would go as far as saying uncastable. But there, as you get higher levels, there are slight redeeming values to it. So yeah. I think the spell is on average bad. If you're 5th level or lower, do not cast this spell. But if you get into like the mid tier,
all right. Well, let's start with what it does.
Okay.
It's a first level spell. It lasts for an hour, no concentration, but that doesn't really matter because all right, the meat of it is protective magical force around you, manifesting as a spectral frost, yada yada yada. You gain 5 temporary hit points for the duration.
Yes.
If a creature hits you with a melee attack while you have these hit points, the creature takes 5 cold damage. And then it is upcastable with temporary hit points and cold damage increasing by 5 for each slot.
Yep.
Now, let's before we get into the spell itself, let's talk a little bit about temporary hit points.
Okay, that's definitely important to the power of it.
Now, how does this work? Now, when you take a hit, do your temporary hit points automatically come off first?
Yes.
And
so
can you and those cannot be replenished with heal spells or anything?
Correct. Functionally,
Yeah.
you get 5 hit points on top of your regular hit points. You can't cast this twice using 2 first level slots to get 10. It always, whatever your highest temporary hit points you would gain becomes the highest temp HP you have. So if you have other effects like false life at will, if you have fiendish vigor, that does not scale with Armor of Agathys. You just get you get your false life or your Armor of Agathys, whichever is higher. So out of the gate, this is hard to really build around. It's hard to make super usable. You can't have extra constitution to try and get more hits in. The temp HP always comes off first. And yes, it doesn't take concentration, so you can concentrate on things like hex, you can concentrate on other things, which is nifty, but it doesn't stack with itself. You can't cast it multiple times to get multiple benefits of it. You can't like pad out your HP to have longer durations of the spell matter.
Well, you can upcast it though.
You can upcast
a similar effect. Yeah, all right. Man, I like things like this that that hit back. But yeah, it's
a cool fantasy.
One question for you. Now let's say somebody hits you for 4 hit points. You still got that 1. Mm-hmm. Does the next person who hits you, do they take the full 5?
Take full 5.
All right, that's something, I guess.
Then you have to ask yourself how many creatures are doing 4 or less damage.
Not many, and also, what are the odds that people can shoot arrows, they can cast spells at you. There's a good chance you're going to lose those hit points before anybody gets close enough to hit you.
Yes.
It's
well, I mean, like, even if something hits you with the short bow, right? Oh, yeah. Bob, all these years I've been saying this spell is utter garbage, but I am now just recognizing that this only deals back damage if it's a melee attack.
Right.
Oh God, that's bad. Yep. I've never been a big proponent of it. I've ruled it that it always reflects the damage, regardless of distance. I've played with it at the table, and that's been the case because I'm aware of how bad I believe the spell to be. But that is awful. So let's do a quick dive into numbers, because 5 in terms of dice is roughly a d6 plus 2, not quite 2d6, but it's equivalent of a goblin attack roll. A goblin attack is doing 5.5 damage, 1d6 plus 2 damage. That's how much a goblin is dealing. So your level 1 CR 1/4 monsters, CR 1/8 monsters take off all of this most of the time. Most of the time, whenever you get punched by a goblin short sword, best case scenario, you're doing 5 damage back. Now, Bob, would you cast a spell that does a d6 plus 2 damage and reduces the damage you take by a d6 plus 2? That's all it does. And you got to pick where that went. Is that a good enough first level spell?
Maybe.
It's worse than a cantrip. You could just use a d10 damage at range. Like,
what does a magic missile do?
Matt, 3d4 plus 3 damage, which is
Yeah.
way higher than that.
Yeah.
Burning Hands is 3d6 damage in a cone, so it hits multiple creatures. For you to care about this, you have to care about it mitigating the damage. So let's say you're a frontline warlock build, you have better options. You have access to False Life at Will, which costs you an invocation, which sure, that's a pretty high order, but it gives you a functioning temporary HP that refreshes whenever you get a minute, because you can just recast until you have 8 temporary HP. So if your goal is to reduce incoming damage, you have better tools as warlock than this. And if your goal is like a first level is to deal damage, this ain't it. 5 damage is attack with you can have a +2 dex and attack with a scimitar and do that much damage. That is not meaningful. And it, like you even prefaced, if someone shoots you with a short bow, this has no text. You lose the 5 hit points, and you spend a first level spell slot getting 1d6 plus 2 hit points.
Yeah.
That's not it.
All right. Well, like I said, I wanted to like this spell.
Well, all right, I'll give you this then.
Well, yeah. What, are you going to bring it up to higher levels? Is that what
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Do that.
So warlocks have pack magic, and this is one of the few instances where a spell gets better with pack magic because you have hypothetically more 5th level spell slots than the other characters. You get like 5 5th level spell slots, everyone else gets 2. Or sorry, you get 3 5th level spell slots, everyone else gets 2 5th level spell slots. Whenever you're dealing 25 damage guaranteed and are getting a pool of 25 hit points, that is quite a bit better. 25 damage reflected is worth it. It certainly can be, at least. If things are doing, like, let's say a giant multi attacks you, you're dealing 50 damage, you're taking 25 damage. That's a very good exchange, even for a 5th level spell slot. We're talking about damage numbers where, because it's guaranteed, because there's no saves, and because it's mitigating a good amount of damage, you're kind of reflecting back double it. This can be a mid-game tool where you're happy enough to be like, all right, great. 25 bonus hit points. Something has to hit me at least twice, probably, for it to reflect the damage back.
Or like you could just charge into a horde of goblins and let them
and they'll all kill
attack.
themselves.
Yeah, you watch them explode like popcorn kernels. That'd be fun.
The thing is, this really does need to be that level. Like, it even being 20 is because then you're looking at like 2-ish attacks from lower CR creatures. It still might insta-kill those lower CR creatures though, so that's nice. But then again, now we're stuck in this stupid situation where I was thinking it reflected all damage, but it doesn't. If you could just get shot at by ranged first, this spell still might just not have text. Like, you still might not do any of the damage back. That's really awful. Aren't melee weapon attacks. This is awful. And as a warlock, you tend to want to have a reliable 5th level spell slot to cast, and you're competing against all the other 5th level options that you have available to you. It's definitely the most competitive thing in warlock builds is what are the 5th level spell slots you're using. And I just don't see Armor of Agathys, even whenever you're at its best, even whenever you're getting 50 damage, which 50 damage is, like 16d6 damage. That's a good chunk of change. For a 5th level spell slot against one creature, is that really worth it to you at that point? And the answer is probably not. The answer I find would be, I'd rather have more flexible tools. I'd rather have better, consistent options to use my precious few pack slots on than cast Armor of Agathys and hope to not get Breath Weapon, and hope to not get Fireballed, and hope to not get Area of Affected, and hope to not get shot by a couple of longbow shots, and have this just be 25 temp HP for a 5th level slot. Because that's definitely not worth it. If you're not doing damage with this, if you're not doing at least 50 damage with this, it's not worth the cast.
Yeah, I'm actually looking forward to the comments on this one, because I know a lot of people are fans of this spell. I did a little of a deep dive one night, checking it out, and I guess people they build around it with other spells or other what have yous. But yeah, if you got comments, leave them below.
Here's where I struggle, right? I want this to be a build around me kind of spell. This is a melee option, right? This encourages you to be fisticuffing, fighting with other things. I just run into the situation, the problem where on my warlocks, I've played many a frontline warlock build. I don't ever see a circumstance where I want this over Fiendish Vigor. I don't ever see a circumstance where I'm happy to cast this as opposed to having useful frontline damaging spells to go alongside me, right? Like, I don't know when soaking 25 damage is better than just doing more damage or positioning better, having more flexible options at my disposal. If you're even going like full tank paladin or full tank warlock, this doesn't scale with so many of the features that you care about. This doesn't really scale with like the fiend pact of the fiend damage because it's so many temp HP that like it'll mitigate. Like, if you kill something with this, you're not really likely to get back any more temporary hit points, so it's not great there. And if it does, it might mitigate. Like if you take 24 damage, then it'll just overwrite it, and then you won't have the 10 HP anyway. Like it works against most of the builds that I would want to be using this in anyway. I have such a hard time seeing it as an integral piece to those collections, and I've tried. I've put this spell on my character sheets before, and I've just routinely been disappointed. And that's where I think it lands for me. I want to like this. I want this to be a cool build around me option. I want this to scale with itself, but because of the way 10 HP work, it just doesn't function the way I want it to. I think to save the spell, you could just bump the numbers up by 5. Like if across the board all the numbers increase by 5, I think this spell becomes moderately usable because dealing 10 damage back at first level is kind of fine, and mitigating 10 damage is decent enough. But like, if you're not casting for level slot, uncastable. When you are, there's probably better things I think you could be doing anyway. So it just ends up being this mediocre 2 out of 5. It's uncastable at lower than 5th level, and at 5th level, it's sometimes good.
All right, I thought you were gonna give it a 1, but yeah, I'm prepared to give it a 2 as well. Yeah, all right. Well, that was Armor of Agathys. Again, everyone, I'm looking forward to your comments. Please enlighten us if you got anything to say. Otherwise,
I do love being wrong.
Yeah. Otherwise, thank you, Sam, and thank you everyone for listening and watching. We will see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching. If you found this helpful, informative, or entertaining, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button below. You needn't smash it. A gentle tap will suffice. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to the channel. And make sure you check out the links in the description, where you'll find my Caverns Creatures series of comedy fantasy novels, Sam's full review of the spell, and other fun things.